Arthur Honegger was a Swiss composer who was born in France and lived a large part of his life in Paris. He was a member of Les Six. His most frequently performed work is probably the orchestral work Pacific 231, which was inspired by the sound of a steam locomotive. Biography. Born Oscar Arthur Honegger to Swiss parents in Le Havre, France, he initially studied harmony and violin in Le Havre. After studying for 2 years at the Zurich Conservatory, he enrolled in the Paris Conservatoire from 1911 to 1918. Studying with both Charles-Marie Widor and Vincent d'Indy, he made his Paris compositional debut in 1916 and in 1918 wrote the ballet Le Dette des Jeux du Monde, generally considered to be his first characteristic work. In 1926 he married Andrée Vorarlberg, a pianist and fellow student at the Paris Conservatoire, on the condition that they live in separate apartments. They lived apart for the duration of the marriage, with the exceptions of 1 year from 1935 to 1936 following Vorarlberg's injury in a car accident, and the last year of Honegger's life, when he was not well enough to live alone. They had one daughter, Pascal, born in 1932. Honegger also had a son, Jean-Claude, with the singer Claire Croizer. In the early 1920s, Honegger shot to fame with his dramatic psalm, Le Roi David, which is still in the choral repertoire. Between World War I and World War II, Honegger was very prolific. He composed the music for Abel Gance's epic 1927 film, Napoleon. He composed 9 ballets and 3 vocal stage works, amongst other works. One of those stage works, Jeanne d'Arc au Bac, a dramatic oratorio, is thought of as one of his finest works. In addition to his pieces written alone, he collaborated with Jacques Ibert on both an opera, L'Aiglon, and an operetta. During this time period he also wrote Danse de la Chèvre, an essential piece of flute repertoire, dedicated to René Leroy and written for flute alone. This piece is lively and charming, but with the same directness of all Honegger's work. Honegger always remained in touch with Switzerland, his parents' country of origin, until the outbreak of the war and the invasion of the Nazis made it impossible for him to leave Paris. He joined the French resistance and was generally unaffected by the Nazis themselves, who allowed him to continue his work without too much interference. He also taught composition at the École Normale de Musique de Paris, where his students included Yves Ramet. However, he was greatly depressed by the war. Between its outbreak and his death, he wrote his last 4 symphonies, which are among the most powerful symphonic works of the 20th century. Of these, the second, for strings, featuring a solo trumpet which plays a chorale tune by Bach in the final movement, and the third, subtitled Symphonie Liturgique with 3 movements that evoke the Requiem Mass, are probably the best known. Written in 1946, just after the end of the war, it has parallels with Benjamin Britten's Sinfonia da Requiem of 1940. In contrast with this work is the lyrical, nostalgic Symphony No. 4, subtitled Delicia et Silences, written as a tribute to days of relaxation spent in that Swiss city during the war. Honegger was widely known as a train enthusiast, and once notably said, "I have always loved locomotives passionately. For me they are living creatures and I love them as others love women or horses." His movement Symphonique Pacific 231 gained him early notoriety in 1923. Many of Honegger's works were championed by his longtime friend Georges Sapine, who conducted the premiere recordings of some of them. In 1953, he wrote his last composition, A Christmas Cantata, after a protracted illness. He died at home in Paris of a heart attack on the 27th of November 1955 1945 and was interred in the St. Vincent Cemetery in the Montmartre Quarter. The principal elements of Honegger's style are Bacchian counterpoint, driving rhythms, melodic amplitude, highly coloristic harmonies, an impressionistic use of orchestral sonorities, and a concern for formal architecture. His style is weightier and more solemn than that of his colleagues in Les Six, far from reacting against German Romanticism as the other members of Les Six did. Honegger's mature works show evidence of a distinct influence by it. Despite the differences in the styles, he and fellow Les Six member Darius Milhaud were close friends, having studied together at the Paris Conservatoire. Milhaud dedicated his fourth-string quintet to Honegger's memory, while Francis Poulenc similarly dedicated his clarinet sonata, Legacy. Honegger is pictured on the Swiss 20-franc banknote issued October 1996, and due to be replaced in 2015. Honegger's symphonic movement Rugby was recorded with him conducting the Paris Symphony Orchestra in a 1929 electrical recording, which can be heard on YouTube. Many of Honegger's recordings as conductor of his music have been reissued on CD by Pearl and Dutton. For a list of notable students, see List of music students by teacher G to J #Arthur Honegger. Notable compositions. Opus numbers originate from the complete catalogue by Harry Halbright. For a longer list of compositions, see List of compositions by Arthur Honegger. For a list of select recordings, see Arthur Honegger discography. Orchestral music. Symphonies, 1930, H75 First Symphony 1941, H153 Second Symphony for strings and trumpet in D 1946, H186 Third Symphony, 1946, H191 Fourth Symphony in 1950, H202 Fifth Symphony in D Symphonic Movements, 1923, H53 Pacific 231-1928, H67 Rugby 1933, H83 Symphonic Movement No. 3 Concerti 1924, H55 Concertino for piano and orchestra in E major 1929, H72 Concerto for cello and orchestra in C major 1948, H196 Concerto da Camera for flute, English horn and strings Others 1917, H16 Le Chant de Nigaban 1920, H31 Pastoral D. E acute T. E acute 1923, H47 Chant de Joie 1951, H204 Monopartita Oratorios 1921, 1935 to 1938, H131 La Danse des Morts, libretto by Paul Claudel 1953, H212 Une Cantate de Noël Operas 1903, Philippa, not orchestrated, performed, or published 1904, Sigismund, lost 1907, La Esmeralda, after Victor Hugo's Notre Dame de Paris, unfinished and unpublished 1918, La Mort de Saint-Almain, libretto by M. Jacob, unpublished and only interlude orchestrated 1925 to 1927, H65 Antigone, libretto by Jean Cocteau based on Sophocles, premiered at Le Monet on 28 December 1927, operettas 1925, H108 L'Aiglon, co-written with Jacobot, libretto 4 acts chapters 2 to 4 by H. Kane, after E 1930, H. Les Aventures du Roi Porcelet, libretto by A. Willemets, after Piloized, premiered 12 December 1930, Paris, Bouffes Parisiens 1931, H. La Belle de Modène, libretto by René Maurax, Mézières Pièce Jorit, Switzerland, the 30th of May 1931, unpublished 1937. H. Les Petits Cardinals, libretto by Willemetsen P. Brach, after El Halavi, Paris. Bouffes Parisiens, the 13th of February 1938. Ballets. 1918. H. 19 Le Dit des Jeux du Monde 1921. H. 38 Horace Victoriou, Symphonie Mime et Chamber Music. 1917. H. 15 String Quartet No. 1 in C minor 1935. H. 103 String Quartet No. 2 in D 1937, H. 114 String Quartet No. 3 in E 1945, H. 181 Paduana for cello solo 1947, H. 193 Intrada for C trumpet and piano solo works 1910, 3 pieces. 1916, Toccata and Variation 1915-9, 3 pieces 1900 and 1920, Servin Short Pieces 1920, Sarabande 1923-4, Le Courrier Roman 1928-9, Homage to Albert Roussel 1932, Prelude Arioso and Fugetta on the name Bach. 1941, Petit airs sur une basse célèbre 1943-4.